We're going to talk a little bit about local printers, and then in another video we'll talk about network printers. Now, local printers, by that term we mean printers that are attached or plugged in directly to a computer that's on the network, or not even necessarily on the network, but one that's plugged in directly to a computer, as opposed to being plugged in directly to the network without a computer. In other words, plugged into, say, a switch on the network or wirelessly to the network. Now, in order for other computers to be able to use that printer, then on my computer I have to share that printer. I have to share it out, we say. Each computer then that wants to use it must have its own driver for that printer. One piece of terminology I want to be very careful about. Microsoft terminology here for this is that a printer is the driver. It is not the physical device. Now, there is a reason for that, and I hope that I can make that clear in a moment. I'm going to go down here to my search box, and I'm just going to type printer. And that way I can open my system settings here for printers and scanners. Now, once I have that open, I can see any number of printers and scanners. Now we can kind of see why Microsoft might use that terminology. Because as far as my software is concerned, these are all printers. Even though, let's look at these two. This is my OfficeJet Pro 6960. And this is what I would use to print on, but if I want to use that same device to send a fax, I would use this one up here. But if I'm in my Microsoft Word, for example, and I click my file up here and then click print and then drop this thing down, you see these all look like separate printers. And so Microsoft considers these, even though what happens is each of these is a separate driver, they look for everything in the world like separate printers. And so that's why we call these printers and not the devices themselves. I have two printers here, a 6960 fax and a 6960 printer. So what then is a printer? Or I should say, what is the physical device? Well, that is a print device, according to Microsoft. Be very careful about that terminology, because that terminology is going to be used on the MTA exam, and you need to be able to interpret it correctly. If I needed to add a printer, I would have to make sure that the software, or that is to say the driver, is available on my system. And I would click Add a Printer, and you can see it's going to search for a printer or scanner. Well, it's not going to find any, and that's because it's not going to find any drivers. And if I put a new driver on here, it would find that driver and it would add that printer. Now, if I wanted to, I could fake it out here. I could click the printer that I want wasn't listed, and then I could just force one of the generic drivers. I could install it, but I'm not going to do that. Actually, it did find one, the Direct 1 EHD OfficeJet Pro 6960. So I did have another driver that it found for this printer, but I'm not going to install that. Also, I have the capability of dealing with these printers by clicking them. This is not a right click. I better bring this down so you can see it. This is not a right click. This is just a regular left click. I can remove the device. I can open the queue if I want to administer what's going on that printer, like remove documents and so on. Or I can click Manage if I want to deal with some of the defaults about that printer, such as printing a test page or troubleshooting, or maybe setting to always print in black and white or always print in color unless I tell it otherwise, and so forth. All right, that's it for local printers then.